For being a part of our study in Deuteronomy. We're in chapter 8.
That's a really good first line.
It's a good first line, isn't it? One of my good friends is Pastor John Modest Mile of the Morning Star Baptist Church. He and I have been in Kansas City for about the same length of time. He is such a good preacher and a good person besides being a good preacher. And one of the things that John does is he always repeats. He always comes back. He always comes back. You know, he always keeps talking. And I wonder if John maybe learned that from Moses, because Moses keeps saying the same thing a whole lot because he wants the people to remember it. Rudy's been talking about remember in our videos this week, and here's some more that we need to remember. Okay? Verse 8, or chapter 8, verse 1, this entire commandment that I command you today, you must diligently observe, so that you may live and increase and go in and occupy the land that the Lord promised on oath to your ancestors. Now I'm going to read you some highlights that I've underlined. Remember the long way the Lord led you through the wilderness in order to humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart. Verse 3, he humbled you by letting you hunger and by feeding you with manna, to make you understand that one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Let's just stop at this for a moment, because Rudy has a huge resonating, we've talked for years about this, about the word of the Lord daily. Why don't you talk to us about this?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, the thing that kind of started locking it in for me that the Lord illuminated was, it's like, you get hungry a couple of times a day, don't you? And then you eat, and it's like, don't you know that your spirit is starving to death if you're not getting some of my word? So
yes, sir.
Okay, so then I understand. Then that actually brought me to the Lord's Prayer and the bread issue within it, and give us this day our daily bread. It's not the spiritual meaning of that is for sure God doesn't want you to go hungry, but He also doesn't want your spirit to go hungry either, because the evil one would have a much easier way to sway you away if it were on the brink of breaking or starving to death.
Right. Can I just stick in a thought? We just finished having at Maywood Baptist our teenagers go to youth camp. And one of the guys really had a good testimony on Sunday in church that I really appreciate. I followed him from childhood on now up into his teenage years. One of the principles I learned about youth camp is most of the time people starve the spirit and feed the flesh. And camp is a time, because they have a lot of things not available there, they starve the flesh and they feed the spirit. Really what you're talking about here is we need to feed our spirit regularly, because we live in a world that wants to starve our spirit and feed our flesh.
It's true, but even greater than that, the reality of hunger in the flesh and in the spirit is true. Mm-hmm. And regardless if we can feel when we're hungry, we're not so sure about being hungry in the spirit. Yeah. Early in the pandemic, I realized how tight people were and so close to exploding emotionally all the time. And to tell you the truth, I was there too.
Okay.
Because I was saying to myself, they're making me crazy. And but actually, I'm making myself crazy. And so what ended up happening was, because I kind of understand this spiritual reality, it's like, if I'm on the edge, what could help me? And that's when I began to, and that's when I said to myself, you're not giving the Lord enough time in your life. Therefore, the only way to correct that is to give Him more time.
Right.
So, didn't seem like I had any more time, but I decided, well, I'll just read one chapter of the Bible every night when I get home before I eat. And it truly helped, because I was allowing the evil one too much room in my mind, because I wasn't putting enough of the Lord in it to take up the space that he was trying to conquer.
Yeah. Let me just respond to that. The reason why I write a daily blog and why Rudy and I do these videos, we appreciate you watching them, and I appreciate people that read my blog. But I started doing that basically out of a need to be accountable to study the Bible every day. When I retired and stopped preaching, one of the easy things is just to kind of let some of that stuff slide. And I needed to be accountable, and reading the scripture every day to prepare to say something, to write something, has kept me disciplined to do that. And I am the biggest recipient of this study, and you have been writing for years and years for the same reason. And we thank you for being a part of it, but we need it ourselves.
I would be doing it even if I weren't doing this.
Correct, me too.
But sometimes, for me, it's like God allowed me to teach Bible studies for about 2 decades, and I would complain a lot, because I'm a complainer, about, doesn't seem like I'm doing any good, Father, and yet it changed my life. But he did have grace on me, he gave me an outlet, so all the things that he was teaching me didn't cause an explosion. So I got a benefit out of it by just being able to retell what he had been doing.
Right.
And you'd be surprised. You get a bunch of information that your daily bread inside of you, you're actually going to talk to other people about it, and then you're really doing what he's asked us to do.
Yes, sir.
To be a witness to the world.
Yes, sir. I want to read one more verse. Verse 5, know then in your heart that as a parent disciplines a child, so the Lord your God disciplines you. Therefore, keep the commandments of the Lord your God by walking in his ways and by fearing him. I want to talk about the word discipline before we close.
Okay.
Discipline, we think of discipline as something negative, like go eat your spinach, or whatever that might be. Discipline means teaching. And so God used the Exodus to teach the people. God used the wandering in the wilderness to teach the people. And there were times when he taught them through his provision, like going to the rock and having the water come from the rock at Meribah. He taught them that way. There were times when he taught them through the manna to depend upon him, that every day he would supply their needs. And he taught them through some of the tough things that they went through when people turned their back on God and they died. So I would like for you to think about God's discipline as his wonderful, gracious teaching. And sometimes, like a parent, he has to teach strongly, with strong words and strong actions. And sometimes he's able to gently take you by the hand. So I have to tell a little Grayson story. I have an 8-year-old autistic grandson, and they spent the night with us the other night. And he was getting ready to go out the door. And I go, no. And he got a really strong no. Well, I've been sleeping in a chair because I have arthritis, and the bed doesn't fit me anymore. And so about 3 o'clock in the morning, he came down and, Papa? And, yep, Grayson? Well, he was there. So he crawled up in my arms, and he and I slept together. Oh, sweet as could be, for about 3 hours. And I thank God just for the wonderful privilege of that. Well, that's how God teaches. There are times we have to say no, and at times he says, crawl up in my arms. So with that, we're going to say thank you so much. Rudy, thank you.
You got me
I
crying.
know. Oh, it was sweet. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.